Well, yesterday we travelled to central Nepal where we met the Gurung people, and I introduced you to the problems of living in a Gurung society, daily problems of clothing and food and so on. And then we looked at communication and how you communicate with, particularly with children, and learn the language and communicate non-verbally. Today I want to look at participation, observation, and possibly ethics if we have time. Now, the best definition of anthropological field methods is participant observation. And I think it's good that it is not observation participation. Participation comes first, and that is in many ways the most important and defining feature of anthropology. This makes anthropology different from all other disciplines, human disciplines. If you think about, many of you are historians. When you are a historian, you just look at pieces of paper. You don't participate with the people you are studying. You don't live with them. Likewise, when you are an archaeologist, you dig up remains of civilizations and you don't actually live with them. As a scientist, you don't go and spend time with your molecules, your bacteria, etc. And in sociology, you don't necessarily go and live in a community. You can do sociology at a distance. You can send out questionnaires or study books, etc. But in anthropology, participating in the life of a community is the central defining feature. It is sometimes described, anthropology is sometimes described as being like a musical instrument on which the culture plays. You learn through actually living with people and then sharing their lives, and it is as if you are a koto or a ahu or a piano or some musical instrument, and the culture plays on you and you have the feelings of that culture. This, as I say, is different from sociology, although sociologists often now use anthropological fieldwork methods. I'm not a particularly good field worker. My wife, Sarah, is better than me because she's more observant, she gets more involved with people, and I stay somewhat at a distance. On the other hand, my training in schools in England, where we had to live with strangers, get involved in their cultures in boarding schools in England, was some sort of training for what I would have to do in the Himalayas. And also the fact that I went to schools which put a huge emphasis on physical life, on games and sports, meant that when I went to Nepal, I was already prepared for the kind of tough life that you would find in a Himalayan village. So what does participation mean in practice? Let's first look at social participation. This is in many ways the easiest and the most pleasant part of anthropological fieldwork, participating in the life of a society. It's very easy and enjoyable to join in social events like weddings or dances. Even funerals and deaths are interesting. Clearly, the important point when you are engaged in such events is to show your pleasure and happiness and enjoyment in being in these community events. But as well as being involved in their events, you need to create events for them. So, for instance, when I first went to work in this Himalayan community, every evening my wife and I would open our house. We would buy a kind of hot drink which is called Horlicks. I don't suppose they have Horlicks in China, but it's a hot drink which you make with milk, and we would make this for the people, and particularly children and other people would come in every evening and spend time with us and sing, and we would talk. So this was a social event which we created. On special occasions we would also have dances. It's a custom in this society, when a stranger comes in or someone who is richer comes to the village, to have a dance. The villagers dance for them and then they collect money from them. So we would from time to time sponsor a dance and buy biscuits and sweets and share them with the villagers. Or occasionally, and more often later, we would buy a large animal, a buffalo, and have it killed and then distribute meat to all the villagers. You will see examples of all these in the films. The other point to make about social events is that all events are social. We tend, or at least I tend, to separate religious events where you are worshipping a god from social events. But in most societies these are mixed together. So a religious event, a funeral or a puja, which is a Hindu religious event, is also a social event. And this will become important later when I discuss the attitude towards religious events. I tended, as I'll explain later, to think of them as religious, but in fact they're just as much a chance for people to meet together and share time together. They are an example of something which is very important to stress. In your lives, you are modern people now in China. You have your social life, you have your economic life, you have your religious life, and you have your political life, and you have separated these apart largely. You spend time with your family here, you spend time in the university there, time in your job there, and maybe if you're a Christian, in your church there. In these kinds of societies which I'm talking about, they are total societies. They are whole worlds, and when you go to them, you return to a world which we have largely forgotten, where everything is mixed and where there is no discrete field. Anthropologists sometimes talk about the institutionalization, which means turning something into a separate institution or entity, and the economy as an instituted process is the title of a famous article in Anthropology. But there are no institutions. The economy is not separate. All relationships are multi-dimensional and multi-level. With you, I only at the moment have, most of you, just one relationship. I am teaching you and talking to you. With some of you, who I now know, we have other relationships of friendship. But on the whole, our society, You have a single relationship here, a single relationship there. In these societies, because you are living with people for a long period, you are doing many things with them. Society and economy are not separated. Politics and religion are not separated. Another thing about the social world is that in our world, we tend to make the whole year just into one constant progression of days and months, weeks and months. But if you are in a farming community, if any of you have lived in a farming community, you will know that the pattern of the year is very, very different. When we first went there for the first time, it was winter, or I guess the middle of the winter, and everyone was just sitting around. They didn't seem to be doing much at all. And I thought, this is a very lazy society. How can they live if they never do anything? And then 3-4 months later, they started to plough the fields, to dig them up, to plant the rice seeds. And gradually the rhythm of another season began, the spring and the summer. And then in the summer you had lots of work of weeding and later the harvesting. So you had the 4 seasons of the year, the winter, the spring, the summer and the autumn. We have largely forgotten that, living in a city like Chengdu. You don't have much difference between your seasons. Actually, the only time I now really get a sense of this rhythm in the West is in my university. So you probably have a little bit of this, because certainly in Cambridge you have the winter term, which is going on now, which has a certain feel to it. And then you have a vacation, a rest, a holiday. And then you have the spring term, and then you have the summer term. And each of them has a totally different feel. There are examinations in the summer. There's the beginning of the year this term. So you have a sense of the rhythms of the year, which is something you feel very strongly, and is one of the nice things about living in an agricultural society. Everything goes round in circles, in a rhythm. So, let me now just show you a few films about participation to give you a feeling of that. The first film is An Evening with Our Family in 1992. This is the main form of social participation, which is just to live with people. And here are the family we had a meal with every evening, and this is just one evening spent with this family and their children. Here you see the youngest daughter, or the only daughter, Prem Kumari, and you just begin to get a sense of daily life within a household in a remote Himalayan community.
Do you still dance, Krishna? Do you? Really? Sheila?
sound is bad. Can that sound be turned off, Alan?
Okay, well, you see an evening in a family in a village in Nepal.
Alan, what you should say is that the puppets and the drafts were actually brought by us.
Yes.
So they'd never seen such things before.
It's not typical because those little puppets, hand puppets, and the game we brought. So that was just something they played with at that time, and probably most families, in fact, indeed, no other families would have anything similar to that.
But they like that sort of thing.
But they like that sort of thing. My wife should be doing this. Okay, well, that's one kind of participation. Another is participation in games, and when we had family picnics, there were always different kinds of games. And here is just an example of the anthropologist participating in a game. The point of this game, as you may gather, is that you tie a balloon to your foot, and then other people try to come up behind you and stamp on the balloon and destroy it. And the person who is left at the end with a balloon on their leg is the winner. Okay, so one of the things I'll just one of the important things to remember if you are doing fieldwork is that you must be prepared to look foolish. You must, if you are always dignified and always trying to be the superior anthropologist in the community, you will never really participate and join in. Fortunately, I learnt this at school, that you can play and people won't think you are stupid if you just participate in the way that they like. And I had an example of this yesterday when I went to give a talk at one of your best middle schools, and in the middle they asked me what my hobbies were. So I said my hobby was playing the guitar, and then I suddenly thought, well, why don't I pretend to play the guitar and sing a song, a pop song of the 1960s by Elvis Presley, which I'm tempted to sing to you, but I won't. And they really loved it. I looked very foolish. 72-year-old Cambridge professor sings Elvis Presley's song. But we suddenly were communicating because they were clapping and we were joining in together. So you have to be prepared to be an actor and to behave in a childlike way in the society, and this will bring you closer. You also participate by sharing pleasures with people in the society, and here we have us watching various events and watching television together. watching television, which was very rare at that time. There was only one television set in the village. It was black and white and showing very old Hindu films from India. You paid money to come in. Now there are a number of television sets. There's satellite television with channels from all over the world. So things have moved on, but as you see, it was a communal activity, watching television.
And run off a battery.
Run off a large battery, yes. So they had to bring up on their backs from the town. Another kind of social event which we enjoyed was each year, if possible, when we went out, the family would hold a picnic, a feast together. Now, in Nepal, a family is much bigger. It's like your old Chinese clan. Now you just have your mother, father, and a few close relatives. And when you have a meeting, you won't have more than 10 or 12 people, except perhaps occasionally at weddings. But in this family, it is what's called a clan. That is, all the people descended down from a particular person in the past. And I and Sarah belong to a clan there, and so each year the clan would have a picnic. And here is the picnic in Pokhara in the year 2000, or part of it. This is another film on a similar theme, another family picnic, when our daughter came from England to visit us in 1994. We'd been going many times to this village, and they knew we had a family, but it was very helpful when our daughter came. It showed that we were just a normal family with children, and they could relate to us, and then from then on they often obviously asked about our daughter, and she came again the next year for a funeral. And here, I think this may be a bit loud, is a bit of the film that I showed yesterday, participating in another form of activity, and again making relaxing and just doing what the villagers do, and they really appreciate this. So. Right, so that's participating in another favourite activity of these people, dancing. The next section is about participating in the physical life, that is the economic life of the people. It's obvious that if you go to an agricultural community like this, that much of the time they will be busy farming in various ways. You can't actually yourself make much contribution. You're not strong enough and you don't have the skills to make much contribution. On the other hand, it's very important to join in the work of a community insofar as you can, just a little. This has several advantages. One is that you learn, I think the main advantage is that you, unless you try and do a job, you won't understand how difficult it is. Many of the things the people here do look very, very easy. Making cloth, carrying wood, ploughing the fields. Anyone can do that. But if you try, even for 5 minutes, to do any of these things, you discover that it's really difficult. It takes great skill and huge muscle power and effort to do any of the jobs they are doing. You soon learn that. The other two advantages of joining in the physical work, participating in their economic life. One is that they see that you respect what they are doing. In many societies, physical work is very lower type of activity. Intellectuals, academics, Brahmins, Confucian teachers, they are people who use their brains, and they despise physical work. But if you actually show you are prepared to use your back, your hands, and work with them, you give a value to what they're doing, and they realize that you are not despising what they're doing. And finally, there is a great advantage in that much of the relationship of an anthropologist or field worker to the people he or she is working with is of a superior to an inferior. You are the white outsider with money, with status. But if you go and try and work in one of these communities, they are the teachers. They see that you don't understand and can't do things. And so the relationship, the roles are reversed. They become the teacher, you become the student. And this helps a little bit to balance the inequality which is always present in fieldwork. So I want to show you a few examples of us learning and doing, although of course we didn't do a great deal of this. These are just still photographs, but they're interesting because if you look at my sister Dilmaya, if you look at her back, her body goes up in a sort of S curve, and it goes down like that and then like that. In that way she can work in that position for hours without becoming incredibly painful. As you see with Sarah's back, my back, if we did this for more than about 3 minutes, we wouldn't be able to get up at all. It's completely the wrong shape. It's much too rigid, and we haven't learned to bend our back. So just cutting rice like that for more than 3 or 4 minutes for us would be impossibly painful, but they can do it for hours. So the first little bit of film is ploughing. Now again, ploughing, that is sowing the seed with 2 oxen here. It looks easy, and actually this is a film of Sarah planting seed and maybe of me ploughing.
Wow. Not even the turning on these narrow terraces, but just keeping a straight line is beyond me. I don't know how to address the oxen.
You see how bad I am at this? I keep having to lift the plough out to keep it in a straight line. That's just a little bit. So as I said, I don't know how to talk to the oxen. I don't know how to keep the plough in a straight line. So after a little bit, I gave up. And here is another kind of agricultural activity, harvesting. Everything has to be done, you see, with your hands or your feet. This is incredibly painful if you did it, because this rice straw is very, very sharp. They're getting the grains out of the rice straw. Again, it looks very easy if you watch people cutting rice, but the stalks are very strong and it takes a big effort to cut a piece of stalk. You see the back, Sarah's back there. You see Dilmaya's back. Look at the difference there. Entirely different. Is it sharp? Watch. Put your hand forward. That's upside down. That's the way. So she's teaching Sarah how to do it. You see. Like that. I was no better either. In fact, I got very hot, bitten by lots of insects, and after about 3 minutes I stopped and said, "This is horrible." They do it for hour after hour after hour after hour. Another form of harvesting is of the small seeds in the end of millet, just cutting the tops off. So that is an occupation which takes them many, many days. Once you have got the grain off the rice, there is another stage which is very, very time-consuming and difficult, and that is getting the outside of the rice, the husk as it is called, off the rice. We have machines to do that, but in this village, like as in China, for thousands of years, you had to do it by hand or by your feet. And it is incredibly hard work. I don't know if any of you have seen a rice pounder. Have any of you seen one of those?
Show them. Show them.
So I will show you, yes, as my wife suggests. But the point I want to make is that these women have to get up often at about 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, to do this pounding for their morning meal. And we are learning how to
using this foot pedal husker with a long lever. It's really exhausting work. Really good.
Oh.
We are doing it together, as you see. You might have to do it for 1 or 2 hours. Not too difficult with 2 people, but just with 1, it is. Now I'm doing it with Frank Kamari. Then the next stage is winnowing, as we call it, getting the bits separated. This again looks easy, but watch her left hand here. It hits underneath. And Kumar is learning how to do it.
And then Sarah tried to do it, and of course she doesn't know what to do with it. We're trying to learn this. Not only do you learn how difficult it is, but you...
See, it's teaching her, you've got to flick it up. But your hands have got to be quite strong to do this.
It's behind.
Behind.
I know, you've lost it now.
It is. So beating and winnowing rice. This is clearing the fields and the hoeing, which perhaps I'll leave. And then this, finally, when you've got certain grains, you have to do this kind of process, which is again quite hard work, very hard work. Have any of you seen this being done? No? Looks easy, but these stones are very heavy. You could spend an hour for one meal doing this.
Is it hard?
So that's another task. The whole process of making a meal, from the beginning to the end, is got many stages, and each of them very labour intensive in a society like this. Again, fetching firewood. You probably hardly think about this because you use electricity, but in these communities everything is cooked on wood, and just in the wet season, which is 3 months, they need 50 or 60 bundles of wood, and you have to go up high into the forest. It takes an hour, cut the wood, bundle it, bring it down to the village, and it can take days and days. And here we see just one stage in it, which is making the wood into bundles. it's difficult work, and also you get thorns in your finger. But we're having a short rest here.
They really help to kill Maya, the
weight of one of these bundles is about nearly as much as the weight of the person who's carrying it. And they will carry one of these bundles down for about half an hour to the next point where they leave it, then come back and pick up another bundle, and so on, and do that 4 or 5 times. As well as all the field and farm activities, they make, or they used to make, many of their bits of clothing and the things they sat on and so on. So these craft activities, which are dying out, were important. And I particularly like this film. There's a famous definition of anthropology by the great American anthropologist Clifford Geertz. He said that we as anthropologists are looking over the shoulders of people who are doing things in the society. We are watching through their eyes and over their shoulders what they're doing. Well, this film reverses that, because as you see, the people themselves are watching over our shoulders to see what we are doing. So they are teaching Sarah, who knows how to weave in the Western way, but she is now learning how to weave in the Gurung way. And you can see how much pleasure and amusement this gives to the people.
Put your feet in. Take off your shoes.
This is called a backstrap loom. It's an Indonesian form of loom where you use your body to give tension to the weaving thread.
Shake it up and down. Shake it up. Shake up and down.
Shake it up. The stitches underneath.
So you become the student of the society.
Put that in. Put that thing. Get hold of that. Hold it the way she takes it. Slowly, slowly.
What do you need my gloves?
Drop that to the
So you see the stages of daily life which goes on all the time in the village. The next thing I would participate in is emotional life. What I mean by that is that if you are a sociologist, a historian, archaeologist, you don't need to use your feelings because you are studying documents or you are studying censuses or whatever. In anthropology, it is a lot about feeling and emotion. Unless you can understand what the people you are working with actually feel about what they're doing, not just what they're doing, but what they feel about what they're doing, you will never really understand them, which is the aim of anthropology. So, how do you do this? Well, in fact, it's not so difficult, because in these small-scale societies, life is very, very immediate and very vivid. That is to say, if someone dies here in Chengdu, you know nothing about it. You don't see death much. How many of you have seen dead bodies? No? No one? Well, I hadn't seen dead bodies before I went to this village, but then I saw a number of dead bodies. When people are sick in Chengdu, they go to hospital. You don't see them. But here you see people suffering from sickness. And you see people crying, you see people laughing. You begin to be very close to the emotional life of the village. And indeed, I tell my students that unless they actually feel with people, then they are not doing good anthropological fieldwork. You need to share their emotions. Of course, there's also the expression of emotion. By that I mean, how do you actually show that you are happy or sad in such a society? Of course, you can cry or you can smile, but there are other things. If someone is ill, or if you meet an old friend or anyone else, how do you express your emotion to them? And this is quite difficult in anthropology because different societies have entirely different ways of expressing closeness and distance. For instance, in this society, they didn't have the custom of putting your arms around someone and giving them a hug or kissing. In many societies, kissing someone is very, very taboo. In Japan, you should never kiss anyone. It's absolutely taboo in Japan. For instance, when they brought in a famous statue by, or piece of sculpture by the great French sculptor Rodin into Japan, it was called the Kiss, and they brought it to Japan. No one had told them, warned them, the French government, that they shouldn't send this particular sculpture, but they sent it, and the Japanese were shocked. Kissing. So they put a sack over the head of the sculpture so that the Japanese wouldn't have it. And early American films, people would start coming close together and then they'd shoot apart because they censored kissing. It's very bad in Japan. And here also. So you have to learn the customs of the society in the ways you express emotion. The next thing you have to do is to participate in the mental and moral life of the society. This is quite difficult because it's difficult for you to suspend your own beliefs and prejudices. For example, in this society, people are graded on the degree to which they are ritually pure. That is, that you can touch them, you can eat food with them, you can marry them. And that is a characteristic of caste societies, as you find in India. But we in the West, and you in China, believe that this is a bad custom, caste. You should be able to eat with anyone, touch anyone, and so on. So what do you do, what do anthropologists do when they go to a society where, for example, you can't touch someone, or where men and women are treated unequally? The general advice is basically to observe the customs of the society in which you are present. You have to suspend some of your own views and prejudices. Obviously, if you feel very strongly about it, you can talk to people and say, I don't believe that you should be treating your women like this, or that you should be treating poor, untouchable people like this. And it may well be that if you explain things and discuss them, they will understand, and you can do as you think is morally right. For instance, in this village, we don't believe that some people shouldn't be touched, or you shouldn't eat with them. So in our house, anyone could come into our house. In their houses, there were people who couldn't go into their houses. We said we were from the West, we would like anyone to come into our house, and that was fine, and we would touch people who they would not touch. They realized we were somewhat different. But always remember that you can't change a society just by saying, we are right, this is our view, you mustn't do that. This is, unfortunately, an arrogant Western attitude. What we do is right, what you do is wrong, and you must change it. And that has led to a lot of trouble in the world for the past few years. So you have to suspend your moral views somewhat. The next section is very important, and I'd like to come to it a little fresh. So it's the involvement in the ritual and religious life of the society. So I think at that point, let's have a little break for 10 minutes, and then we'll come back to ritual life. Okay? If you're all rested and ready to go on our exploration of a Himalayan community, I now want to take you into the most difficult part of anthropology, which is to try and get inside the religious and ritual systems of other civilizations. This is often the most shocking and surprising part of other people's lives, particularly because I think now it's very difficult for us and for you to really realize how important religion and ritual is in most societies until recently. And it's difficult to know how to adjust your own thoughts and behavior in alignment with what you encounter in these societies. Let me mention one or two of the difficulties and then show you some examples. One of them is that in England and in the West, we believe in one God. That God is way out there. He rules our lives, but he's not down in this world around us all the time. When you go to a society like the one we're visiting, there is no division. God is not up there and we are here. God and spirit is everywhere. You have something of this, of course, in China with Taoism and in ancestor rituals and beliefs. But for modern Chinese in a city like Chengdu, God, if he or she exists, and the spirits are a long way away most of the time. And that's certainly the case in my life. So God is in a box kept up there. But God, in that box, has special occasions when you suddenly need him or he is present. And those are called rituals. So on Sundays you go to a church, there is God, you talk to God, come out of the church, you get on with your life. So you split off the holy, the world of God, from ordinary practical life. Now, in the society we're visiting, that isn't the case. Everything, as I mentioned, is mixed up, the social, the economic, the religious and the political. And so God is around you all the time. You can just turn over, you can be walking through the forest and you accidentally hit against a rock or a tree and you become ill because there is a God in that tree or rock. You need to throw a bit of food into the fireplace because there is a God in the fireplace. You need to be careful not to make an old woman angry because she is a powerful spirit. She is a witch and she has the power to kill your children and so on. So the whole of life around you is filled with danger, witches, gods, spirits, which can suddenly make you ill or kill your animals or whatever. So, moving from my world into that world, there were many occasions when I didn't quite know how to behave. For instance, when you go into a church in England, or you go to someone's funeral or wedding, well, a funeral, you wouldn't take a camera, a video camera, and film it. This is a holy occasion. So when I first went to some rituals in this village, and they were singing and chanting and obviously doing something religious, I thought everyone would be, as in an English church, very, very quiet and praying to God and so on, and that I shouldn't talk, I shouldn't bring out a camera and so on. Then I noticed they were all chatting, talking to each other. It was a social occasion. So I said, would it be all right if I just took some photographs and films? And they said, of course, no problem. Because this isn't set apart, it's not special. It's just an everyday event. Another difficulty I had was in my religion, in Christianity, you are a Christian. And if you are a Christian, you believe in certain things. And you must not let your mind and heart go out to any other religion. You must not follow another religion. And therefore, for instance, you shouldn't go to a church of another religion and worship there if you're a Christian. This was the old view. So what do I do when I go to a place where they're doing all sorts of religious rituals, which I don't believe in? And yet, should I go as a Christian and sit through a Hindu ritual or a Buddhist ritual or an anti-witchcraft event? Aren't I in some way betraying my God by doing this? So I felt a bit uneasy about this at first. And then I noticed an interesting thing about the society, which you also in China, I think, could understand better, which is, in my society, you have one God, a Christian God, and that's it, no others. But in this particular society, as in China to a certain extent, you have many different forms of religion, and you can follow them together. This seemed very strange to me, that in the morning you could go to someone's house and they would be doing a little Hindu ritual, a puja, with a Brahmin. And then you go back in the afternoon and they were doing a ritual with a Buddhist priest. And then you go back in the evening and they're doing a ritual with a shaman. 3 different religions, all in one day in one family. And they don't see any difficulty about that. It's just get the best person to do the best job. And indeed, in a number of their rituals, as you'll see in the funeral ritual, they have both Buddhist and pre-Buddhist ancient shamanic priests working together. So I realized that what I should do is what we call suspend your disbelief. Don't abandon your own religion, but suspend it, turn it off for the moment, and let your mind and heart join whatever is going on in the society. Relax, realize that they have their way, you have your way. And just by going to a puja or going to a Buddhist ritual, you're not betraying anything. You are, in a sense, doing what we all do as human beings, which is that we enter different worlds. When you read a book or watch a film, you don't change as a person, but you go into that world. And that is what anthropology is about, going into another world, staying yourself, but for the moment, suspending your disbelief. And that is the only way, really, that you will begin to learn. What I'm going to take you into, therefore, is what I call an enchanted world. That is, that this world is filled with magic, enchantment. It is like children's worlds. It is like lots of children's stories where you have strange creatures which you half know are present. You can't quite see, but they are all around you, and they will come down and influence your lives. So let's have a look at a few of the rituals of this society. The first one of the distinctive features of this society is that they have a very complex ritual dance. This goes on for 3 days and 3 nights. It's danced by young girls before they reach sexual maturity. It has to be danced exactly right. If you make a mistake in the singing, people will die. And often they go into trance. They start dancing automatically without being aware of things. And this is just a little bit of the ritual dance. But again, here, I am participating by dancing with them. This is my time. that goes on for 3 days and 3 nights in the full version. And it's a very moving and original part of their culture. Another kind of ritual is a family ritual. That was a community ritual. This is a family ritual. This is the most important ritual in, or part of the most important ritual in Hindu societies in India. Dasai, or Dasara as it's called, the autumn festival when the harvest is in, and you have all sorts of the festival of lights, which you may have in China, when everyone lights little candles. Do you have this here? No? You have the street festival when you burn money in China, I know. But this is the autumn festival, and as part of it, families which have been split apart, the brothers and sisters are living in different villages, they come back, and you have a little ritual in which brothers and sisters honour each other. They put a tika, which is a mark, on their forehead, and they give each other presents and food. And because I was adopted into a Gurung family with my wife, we are having this special festival. Now it wouldn't happen with a stranger, but because we were so close, we are having this. And as you'll see, this lady here, Dilmaya, my sister, is honouring me by putting garlands round my neck, by putting powder up behind my ears and on me, and in the most intimate gesture, more or less, almost the most intimate gesture that a human being can do to another, feeding you by hand into your mouth like a child. And she will do this in this ritual. And also you'll see Sarah doing rituals with her brother, who's there, adopted brother. These are given by my other sisters who couldn't be present. It's a present. Exchange of presents. So the same ceremony for Sarah, sister-in-law. And Sarah's doing it for her brother. And here's the feeding. So that's being honoured within a family. That was taken in the year 1994, in the autumn, and we didn't know, obviously, when we filmed that, which was the first time we filmed it, that within 3 or 4 months my sister would be dead. She died in April 1995, suddenly, a heart attack. She'd been working very hard in the forest, carrying heavy bundles. Then she came down, she did a lot of cooking because it was a family festival. And they went to bed, and her husband just suddenly heard her sigh 2 or 3 times, and when he lit the light, she was dead, age of 42. And so we received a message which obviously shocked us deeply, and they said, you must come back because you are the brother and you must perform in her funeral. And this is part of, or not in the funeral, in the memorial service which you have a bit later. So this is part of the memorial service to that lady you just saw, with her daughter sitting in the middle here. And here you see the different kinds of priests, and also me as a brother involved in the ritual.
and taking her spirit, which has been wandering since her death in the village, up, with the help of all these shamans, up across the mountains to the land of the dead. This goes on for 3 days, 3 nights, and is a huge cathartic event, singing, dancing, drinking, weeping, laughing, which gradually eliminates part of the grief and makes the world seem right. As the brother, of course, I have to be there and help the spirit leave the village. And also my wife and my wife's daughter, Astrid, are there as well. Mostly women. The spirit goes into a sheep and Sarah washes it, combs it with the Maya's comb, shows it itself, or the spirit inside it, in the glass, and then the sheep is fed a lot of food. Its neck is cut off and they examine its insides and find that the food has disappeared, which we actually witnessed and filmed. The food had gone. And this goes on with many other rituals.
So this is the last day. This funeral goes on for, or the memorial goes on for 3 days and 3 nights. Huge event, and I've got a film of all of it if any of you later want to see it. Now that funeral had some Buddhist type of, or Tibetan looking priests there. There are also Hindu rituals, and here is participating in the Hindu ritual. And I think you'll see, if we get to it, a very interesting moment where they have been passing around food and drink, and a little bowl comes to Sarah, and she drinks a little bit of it, and then realizes that this is what we call cow's urine. That is where the cow pees, and they collect this, and it is very holy. The people themselves don't drink it, they pretend to drink it, but Sarah had a... And then, being a good wife, she tried to warn me without saying anything by just looking at me and saying, "Don't drink this." So we're going off to the ritual.
Priests to do a ritual. Just a familiar. It is basically a social gathering with a ritual, a substance which Tilma is putting on her forehead, but Sarah drinks and then indicates to me, just by facial gestures, that this is cow's urine.
Yeah.
Going on in the background.
So as you see, we're taking it quite seriously, but also chatting and filming at the same time. So that's a little bit of a Hindu ritual. And then, in the way they mix things together, this is a shamanic healing ritual, a shaman. And in this case, I think it was because I was deaf. I suddenly became deaf, just like that. And I went to the hospital and they couldn't do anything about it. So I thought I would go to the local shaman in the village and see if he could do anything about it. And he was sure he could, if we could give him a chicken. Unfortunately, we were a bit mean, so we gave him a very small chicken. And I think this was not sufficient to prevent the witch, who he said had bewitched us, bewitched my ear. She wasn't happy with this chicken, so I'm afraid I'm still deaf in this ear. But you'll see a little bit of a healing ritual by a shaman.
Sangle sama lah. Sangle lah.
Sangle?
Tara kaya lah. Sangle kan? Sunna kau kalau ya guru. Sunna kira ada pun sunna kau jadi dah.
Just taking that.
Look, saya apa anu juga?
So Sarah is going to be blessed as well. I must say that the first once or twice that I had a shaman doing a ritual when I was ill, I had a bad thumb and so on, I felt rather hypocritical. Here I was, a Western educated academic, sitting there pretending that I believed that what he was doing could do me some good. Wasn't this a bit cheating? Wasn't I being a bit unkind to him? I should have just said, I don't believe in this. But who knows? We don't understand the world. There are many things which we don't yet know, and who knows whether some of the things he did might possibly, since my own medical system, the Western medical system, had found no reason for my deafness. Why not try other things? And this was their attitude as well. They take Western medicine, they use a shaman, they take herbs, all sorts of medicines. So we live in a world of pluralism. It's the same with Western medicine now. For 100 years they said Chinese medicine, oh, rubbish. No evidence that Chinese medicine works. Now we know that many Chinese medicines are extremely effective. If I get a bad bump, I put on Chinese medicine, it immediately goes. If I get a cold, I take Chinese medicine. So, who knows why things work? And so I don't feel quite so hypocritical. Then there are also Buddhist rituals, and this is part of a Buddhist ritual with lamas saying, acting in a memorial service.
The dead man, from a photograph we'd taken by alcohol, and some Buddhist lamas chanting. This goes on for a day and a night.
This goes on just for a day.
It is very repetitive. Most people don't understand what's going on. There we see there
108 candles burning.
108 lights.
With the photograph of the dead person behind, you can see her face. Well, actually, this isn't the dead person, this is the widow.
Describe this. But there are bits that are interesting. The relatives bowing 108 times. And you can talk to people and ask them what's happening and catch up on information. Like my father, Owen Singh, who's sitting back there.
So, participating in a Buddhist ritual. And then participating in a full shamanic ritual. In China, it should be easier for you to understand this, what we call pluralistic world, more than one kind of religion, because in China, of course, historically, you've had ancestor worship of a kind, you've had Taoism, you've had Confucianism, you've had Buddhism, now you have Christianity. So you have many different, you have geomancy and so on, you have many different belief systems in China. It's just we in the West who have one, historically. Christianity, Islam, Judaism. And here inside our house, the first ritual is inside our house, and every year the family does a ritual because it is a special family which is associated with a god. And they've made a rice image of the god. And you'll see something which you wouldn't see as a tourist, which is an ancient form of ritual which dates back 2,000 years maybe or more to northern China. Came down through Sichuan, through Tibet, into this area and has been preserved among these people.
And myths have been transmitted from northern China down to this area and better preserved here than almost anywhere. So here we see in our house a 12-hour shamanic ritual going on. Starts in the middle of the day and goes right on into the middle of the night. Beating, drumming. My brother-in-law goes into trance. Then I was watching a huge rice effigy to the gods is made. Watching these things, you can't remain entirely detached. Often you feel quite overcome, frightened, excited, elated. It's all very mysterious. And then finally, as the family, this rice effigy is swirled over my head, and I'm filming from underneath it.
ritual. Which is done overnight. And it's quite dramatic too. The anthropologist is not always observing, as you see. So, one thing I remember, I had a colleague who was a very important writer on rituals in South America, and he used to tell his students to remember that these rituals are extremely boring. Now, they often go on for hours and hours and hours, and it's also boring because you don't understand what's going on. And this is the final point I'd like to make about observing ritual, which is that when you first see a ritual, it seems completely confused. You don't understand anything about it. Often, if you watch it once, the first time is confusion. And then maybe you watch it again, you begin to understand little bits. Then you watch it some months later, and you understand quite a lot, because you begin to understand the society. You understand why this person did it, not that person. Why these two people are exchanging things. So as your comprehension of the society increases, your understanding of the rituals, or the social side of the rituals, increases. The other thing to say is that often anthropologists found these events completely confusing, and they thought, if only I could understand what the people themselves think about it, if I could get inside their minds, then I would understand it. But some of my colleagues at Cambridge University, in particular, wrote a book about ritual, in which they argued, on the basis of having talked to many people in many societies, that most people, ordinary people, don't understand why they're doing these things. The priest will just say, now do this, now do that. He will often be speaking in a language no one understands. And so you just do it. You just follow the... And then, much to my colleagues' surprise, even the people who are actually doing the ritual, if you ask them, why are you doing this? What is the meaning of this? They say, I don't know. Someone just told me, my father taught me to do this. So no one understands it. But it is good to do it. This is the point about ritual. What a ritual is, in the definition of anthropology, is a form of action and words which brings spiritual power. So if you say these words and you do these things, then power will come into your life. You don't have to understand what the words mean or what the actions mean. It is the doing of them. So it's like many things we do in our lives. You drive cars, you don't understand how a car works or the meaning of a car. You just drive it. And so basically people do rituals just automatically. It's a kind of automatic activity. But it's incredibly important in a society like this, where the whole world around you is filled with spirits. Now you may think this is a kind of primitive society where they believe that the world around you is filled with spirits. But there is actually one of the most sophisticated civilizations on Earth which has a similar belief, and that is Japan. The Japanese believe that kami, as they call them, which is a kind of invisible power, like electricity, is everywhere. You can't see it usually, sometimes you see it, but usually you just feel it is there, And everything has it. For example, their Toshiba laptops have kami in them. When they open a new building, they get Shinto priests to come and bless it, because there are spirits there. Trees have it, rocks have it, waterfalls have it. It is all around you. So this is an industrial, scientific, modern, urban civilization, Japan, which believes in a similar way to these people, that the spiritual world and this material world are not separated. They are the same. And of course you have it in China, with geomancy, the idea that buildings should be placed facing in a certain direction, because that will be good luck, auspicious, and so on. And that indicates there is power out there in distances. You also have it in your writing. Calligraphy has an idea that the words have some power in them. You have it in your beliefs about ancestors and where they should be buried. So China, in some ways, has some of this invisible shamanic presence in it. My society in the West has, on the whole, got rid of most of it. So at that point, we have had an experience of what it is like to participate in another kind of world. And I now want to turn, in the last part of the lecture, to observation.